Baylor wants to get to a national championship level. What do? You take players from the national champions. This is the Locked On Baylor Friday Transfer Portal.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Game Time. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and The Cam Show. We appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day. It's a Transfer Portal Friday, and we've actually got a couple of sports to go over because Scott Drew goes out and gets a guy out of the portal midseason. But first, we've got to address how the Baylor defense, football-wise, has bolstered itself with the help of the national champions. That's all coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. So you win a national championship with Ohio State on Monday. The only logical thing to do before the end of the week is to join the Baylor Bears. At least that's what some are thinking. Calvin Simpson-Hunt makes it official. He commits to the Bears yesterday. Matt Zenitz was the first one on it. But our friend Will Turboff was all over it as well for Bears Illustrated. He's a cornerback from Waxahachie, so has that Texas ties. And he's played sparingly for Ohio State. Like, let's get that elephant in the room right out there. He's only played 30 defensive snaps for the Buckeyes in his 2 years there. He played a good amount of special teams this year, and some of the coaches up there were talking about the strides he made in the special teams unit, but didn't see a lot of the field on the defensive side, which is where he's going to come in and play at Baylor. He has 3 years of eligibility remaining, which again is huge. You know, how many times have I said it during this portal window in terms of, like, you know, you've either got your guys who have a ton of experience and are just looking for one last year at the next level, or you've got those guys who it doesn't quite work out at another Power Four, and in this case, a powerhouse, right? National champions, Ohio State. And they're looking to kind of resurrect their career while they still have time. And that's what you have here in this scenario with Simpson-Hunt. I think it's a big-time pickup for Baylor. Maybe not necessarily when you look at the stat sheet, but in terms of positional need and the eligibility he has remaining, it's big. And he's also, you know, he's got the prospect. You know, he was a top 10 cornerback in the nation a couple years ago coming out of high school. It looked like he wanted to stay close to home, had originally committed to Tech, then, you know, flips to Ohio State. We all know, you know, the prestige of that program versus programs like Texas Tech or Baylor. It's tough to turn down, and certainly probably some money going with that as well. Now he gets a chance, sees an opportunity with Baylor and with Dave Aranda, who did offer him out of high school, and Paul Gonzalez, because TCU offered him as well. Paul Gonzalez, who was obviously the defensive backs coach there, now the cornerbacks coach and passing game coordinator at Baylor, and already kind of making some instant dividends here. In terms of what this pickup means for the 25 football season, that one we'll have to kind of wait and see. I know it's all wait and see, but you see some of these guys, like, for example, a Kobe Prentice, and you see a guy like that, and you're like, he's gonna play. Like, he's going to be a starter next year, if, you know, unless something crazy happens, or you know, the linebackers, Phoenix Jackson, Travion Barnes, you're like, those guys are going to play. They're going to be part of the rotation. But it's different when you bring in someone who just hasn't seen the field a lot. For example, I think we were all pretty excited about Josh White coming in from LSU a couple years ago, Houston area kid and 4-star out of high school, very similar to what we're talking about here with Simpson-Hunt. And he hadn't seen the field at all defensively. He's been a special teamer for Baylor in the couple years since he's been there. So I think Calvin Simpson-Hunt will be a starter for them at some point. Whether it's 2025, we'll see. You know, there's absolutely that opportunity as well. I'm not trying to say, like, hey, this kid's a project. But with just the limited snaps he's played on defense, we don't know if he's going to be out there against Auburn week 1 covering their wide receiver. You know, I don't know. But he's certainly a kid that comes in with a ton of promise. Sounds like a good attitude. and he's working with a pretty damn good cornerbacks coach in Paul Gonzalez. Like, that Gonzalez effect also needs to be taken into account here, right? Like, all the guys he put in the NFL, the Thorpe Award winner he had, like, Gonzalez, he knows what he's doing here. Not to say that Kevin Curtis did not, but we know the resume of Paul Gonzalez. We heard what Gary Patterson said about him earlier this week. Nothing but praise for this guy, and a pretty good resume to go along with it. So there you have it. Ohio State loses one of their corners to Baylor. And towards the end of the portal here, like this is really all you're looking at is Ohio State and Notre Dame, because they have the 5 days, which will be up this weekend. So we'll see. There's a couple offensive linemen in the portal from Notre Dame, something for Baylor to look at. But after this weekend, you're basically looking at the spring transfer portal window, and that comes after spring games and all of that. So it's something we got to keep an eye on. In terms of the Ohio State guys, the Notre Dame guys, we'll have to keep an eye on this Micah Hudson thing as well. I know people think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, there's interest. There is interest. And I know that in high school, there was interest on Micah's end with Baylor, but things didn't necessarily come together. And we know Dave Aranda has struggled to recruit in their own backyards. So we'll see with that one. But it's gonna come to a head this weekend. Whatever it is, maybe it's nothing. And Baylor, I think, was successful in the spring transfer portal last year, specifically bolstering that offensive line. Maybe that's what they're doing this year on the defensive side. But in terms of eligibility, positional need, and prospect of a kid, like Calvin Simpson-Hunt knocks all 3 boxes, all of them, right? Like, sure, he's only played 30 defensive snaps at Ohio State, but he's been playing at Ohio State. You know, he's been playing under some of the best coaches in the country. Like, he's going to have a national championship ring in a couple months. You know what I mean? So there's that. There's the 3 years of eligibility. And there is the clear-cut talent that this kid showed out of high school. Some people will be cynical about this, saying, oh, you know, he didn't play. You're just getting a backup. And maybe they are, but we see it all the time with college football. Like, sometimes it's just things just don't work out and you just don't see the field. And in the case of a case like this, like, again, how many times I said it so far? Like, we're talking about the national champions here. It's not easy to crack the field, okay? It's not easy to, to get out there and have 4 or 5 picks in a year when you're a cornerback at Ohio State, So this could be the stepping stone that he needed to get to the right place. And hopefully Baylor is that right place. But in terms of what Baylor was looking for, and I'm sure what Calvin Simpson-Hunt was looking for, perfect marriage. Right at the end of the portal window here. I think it's an awesome move. And by the spring, I think you'll probably see that they will at least host visits for some of these guys who look more clear-cut day one starter at corner as well. But by that time, they'll probably have a good idea with what Calvin Simpson-Hunt can do, having gone through spring practices. So guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Of course, Locked On Baylor's rolling on because now there's some accusations of tampering with the Bears' recent pickup on the hardwood. That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, this message is brought to you by Game Time, the only place I go to buy tickets. And I'm telling you guys, and attending an NFL playoff game, it's the best. I did it a couple years ago, 10 years ago, actually, for a Patriots AFC championship game. It was just awesome. The energy, the excitement, that atmosphere, the connection with the people that you have, it's something I'm never going to forget. So this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. I use Game Time Picks to grab a couple of tickets for an upcoming hockey game, Connor Bedard versus Connor McDavid here in Chicago. I got the best value because it lists it that way. I knew I was getting a great deal. I knew which team was shooting at that net twice, and I got the view from my seats. Nothing more than I needed. Truly, it was an awesome, awesome experience. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Bombshell, unexpected news on this Thursday. Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears land a commitment mid-season in the transfer portal from Cameron Carr, a shooting guard recently of Rick Barnes' Tennessee Volunteers. Now he comes in with a couple years of eligibility left. He's only played a season and a half with Tennessee. Wasn't getting a ton of playing time this year, but was a big-time recruit out of high school, top 60 recruit, 4-star, and was kind of a prized recruit for Tennessee out of Link Academy, actually, where Jacoby Walter was playing, where Baylor target Trey Johnson played, one of the great prep programs in America right now. And all of a sudden, here we are, end of January, and bang, just news out of nowhere that Cameron Carr has committed to Baylor. I got to say, it's so much different from football. Maybe it's just a Baylor thing, but Scott Drew moves in silence. Real G's move in silence like lasagna. And Scott Drew does that, man. No one saw Norchad Omier coming. Jeremy Roach, the rumor was out. Yeah, I think it was also a Thursday. Thursday afternoon, the rumor's out. Thursday night, he's making the commitment. All these other schools and other sports, it has this buildup. But this once again kind of comes out of nowhere. And now Tennessee fans are finding something fishy about this. In fact, some on Twitter are saying that it's tampering. It has to be tampering from the Baylor Bears, right? They played earlier this year. Remember that in November? Well, I wish I didn't remember that. Tennessee ran away with that game. And clearly, they must have had something going on. They must have had some kind of conversations. There's no other reason. It's not that, Baylor is a pretty good program and have had a good time the last half decade here developing guards. But one fan on Twitter wrote, Tennessee played Baylor in the early season tournament. This has tampering written all over it, but the kid obviously didn't want to play defense or rebound, so good luck to him. Defense, I'll give you that. It's not been great this year, but if the kid can zone up, we got a spot for him, and it is one of the best rebounding teams in the Big 12. So I hope you take that back, sir, on X, Twitter. This is obviously a big-time problem around college sports and the portal, specifically college football. We hear about this all the time, of teams tampering with and talking to players when they shouldn't be. Very much doubt this is the case. Very much doubt it. There's always ways to connect with agents and agents to coaches and all that. But first off, there's not that many stories around college basketball in particular with tampering, and there's been nothing around it with Baylor. People have wanted to. This is actually the people who are tweeting this, and there's a couple in those comment sections. I think they might be Rick Barnes' burner accounts, because Rick Barnes, more than anyone else, wanted the NCAA to crack down on Scott Drew for these made-up, make-believe recruiting violations. He wanted to throw Scott under the bus so hard when Scott started to get his full allotment of scholarships and started beating Rick Barnes. And there was some smoke coming from Rick Barnes' camp. Basically, it was almost like what Gary Patterson said about Art Briles a decade ago before the scandal came out. Remember that, when he was like, one of his players got arrested for beating a kid up over some natty lights, and he was like, yeah, we'll go check out what's going on 100 miles south. That's kind of what Rick Barnes was doing. When people would crack down on him or Bill Self, and he'd be like, yeah, well, look what this guy's doing. You should investigate this guy. I'm not going to say anything because I don't have any proof, but you should just look into it. You do the math. That classic BS. You do the math. I'm not going to tell you. I know it, but I'm not going to tell you. That's what Rick Barnes was doing with Scott Drew for years. And of course, that's exactly what it is. It's BS. It's BS, man. And Cameron Carr, in terms of the player that you get here, kind of interesting. I was talking about it with Calvin Simpson-Hunt from Ohio State on the football side of things. Here's a guy who comes in mostly on potential. He hasn't played a ton in his college career. In fact, he's only appeared in 18 games throughout his college career. And he went from 4 minutes a night to 10 minutes a night this year. And, small baby steps, but 1.5 a game to just under 5 points a game, which is interesting because that's not an insignificant jump. It's not where you want to be if you're a top 60 recruit as a sophomore. I get that. And that's what it comes down to. But that 10 minutes, you're in the rotation for quite literally one of the best teams in America. So I guess he just wasn't happy with that playing time. And for you Baylor fans, myself included in this, who are talking about how the Bears need to change their roster building, this is a peek inside it. Okay, because top 60 recruit, but he's got 2 years of eligibility after this, and it's not like he's just a threat to go into the lottery next year as we look at it right now. And it works exactly like the transfer portal, but back then they were just called transfers, how Scott Drew was making those guys into elite players, right? Some of the best players of Baylor history, Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, Adam Flagler. These guys had to redshirt a year. They couldn't play with the team, so they could only practice with them. That's what Cameron Carr gets to do right now. He's going to enroll at Baylor. He's going to be a student this semester, and he's going to practice with the team. So now you've got a kid with all kinds of potential, a top 60 recruit, who can come in here next year and will have already done the practices. We'll have already gone through it for the most part this year. And he's probably not a threat to be a top 10 pick like Baylor's battled the last couple of years with some of their best players. They're one and dones. So now you've got the practice time like you got with, again, the Teagues, the Mitchells, the Chachuas of the world. And then you've probably got 2 years out of them, the way you did with all those other guys I was talking about. So this is a small step towards that for everyone, including myself, who wants to see this new roster building change. This is how it starts right here. They're starting it on the fly while they've got probably at least one, or I shouldn't say one, at least 3 one and dones on this roster with Roach O'Meara and VJ Edgecombe. So maybe this is the start of it. But Cameron Carr, welcome to the Baylor Bears. No tampering required. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Are Tennessee fans crazy about this? Probably. It's just that Rick Barnes Kool-Aid, Rick Barnes burner accounts. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. We are on the march towards 4,000 subscribers. Appreciate you making it your first and second listen today and every day. Stay safe. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you later on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.